thinking of the Wild Ones intro last night. Makes me laugh.
I don't remember what I said.
Wild what?
Oh yeah, why the fuck did I do that?
Got me so off guard. Alright.
Okay,
Let's do it.
2, 1, 2, 3. We always do this. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to another episode of Wild Ones. This is a particularly interesting episode. The reason being is because, well, Scott Bradley, who is sitting next to me here, has obviously been a part of SOSA and in my life for the last 2 years or so. The first project that ever started with SOSA was in Madagascar. I was looking for a videographer, found Scott through one of our alliance organizations, Saving the Blue. Saving the Blue recommended Scott to me to help on one of these projects. And as a eager adventurer with a love for wildlife, we hit it off through a couple video chats back and forth as he was in Borneo doing a video project at the time on local wildlife there and orangutans, to which all of a sudden, a few weeks later, we ended up in Madagascar together on a 1-month-long adventure, working with a couple different organizations to understand lemurs and what it takes to protect lemurs. So now we're in Costa Rica, working on a very similar-esque project, and beside me is Scott Bradley. Scott.
How we doing?
I feel like this conversation could go in so many different directions because one, it could be storytelling the whole time, and then two, we always have natural banter anyway. So like if they had all of our conversations recorded since the beginning of time, this would make this conversation so much better.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, this conversation will be interesting because you've been on all the adventures that I have been on for the most part.
Been from the start, yeah.
And I think people would like to probably know, like realistically, who's this English guy in your videos all the time?
Yeah, it's wild actually. It's interesting because I don't think I was ever really set to become a videographer at all, which is interesting to see how it turns out now and how I think everything happens for a reason, because now I wouldn't change it for literally anything. I'm absolutely living the dream, but it was weird. I was always only ever into sport. I was only ever interested in sport, nothing else in my life. And then, long story short, I stopped playing rugby. Kind of just fell out of passion for it, as you do with some things sometimes. And I didn't know what to do, and I knew I needed some sort of direction. I'd hate the feeling of like just being lost. I don't like it. I need some sort of goal. And I knew I always enjoyed having a camera in my hand. So I was like, well, I know there's this local film school at my college. I'll just go join it, and at least it gives me some sort of direction. And I think that's where I fell in love with creating stories around animals. It was funny, one of my first videos was actually it was a short documentary on frogs, and I hate frogs.
Like local frogs.
Yeah, frogs from back
in your
home,
backyard, yeah.
in my pond and stuff. And I did a project on like the deforestation and how they get run over and things like that. And it was a pretty good video actually. And I think I just loved creating a story around animals compared to doing anything with people. I was just way more fascinated by it. And then I think that's where it picked up. I then went down the animal route, met Saving the Blue, wanted to do some work with them because I was fascinated by sharks being my favorite animal and the science behind shark biology and everything. And then COVID came and I was like, well, bugger, I don't know what to do now. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go to university because I didn't want to sit in lockdown for ages and twiddle my thumbs. So I went to university because that meant I could get through some of my degree, got through the first year and a half during COVID, which was pretty good. And that's really where I think everything started to take off. That's then when we met and what project after project started happening. And I think that's where I really discovered the passion for wildlife videography. And that's what I wanted to do. And then it just grew from there. And I think with the balance and the dynamic that we have, I think it just made it super easy for going on these projects and being able to bounce ideas off each other and kind of just grow the SOSA into what it is and what it will become.
So in regards to what I always find interesting is people from the UK in general. UK gets a bit of a, they don't get hype around their wildlife that they have there. So, I mean, leaning into frogs was like one of a few easy things, I think.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that like frogs being the thing that you just don't really care for them so much so was the thing that actually got you into it in a weird way, and the trickle effect of that. But if you're saying you love sport so much, what is it about the adventure in wildlife and that curiosity, and like what is the competitive nature in that you found almost like this competitive drive or adventure for
something that aided in like
like what is it about that?
I think it's the adventure itself. I've always been so up for, I'm a bit of a yes man when it comes to getting out and doing anything. Like I'm down for anything. And being on adventures, whether it's expeditions in the jungle or just going on a hiking trip with my buddies, like any adventure I loved, and it's what fuels me, it's what drives me, and being able to explore different places, animals and things like that, and then finding an opportunity to be creative whilst also fueling that passion for adventure and exploration came kind of hand in hand with what I'm doing now with the SOSA. And I think every time there's a new place or a new animal to go do, and I think that's why like snow leopards is so high on my list, because it's the best of both worlds. I get to go see my favorite cat, one of the coolest cats out there, and I'd be trekking up high into the mountains to go find them through tough terrain. It's literally the blend of both worlds for me. And I think because we've traveled so much and we're in so many different environments, different animals, it's literally like a drug. It's getting a new hit every single time because it's every adventure is different.
Now, you're speaking on, you know, how it's almost been like a side quest in the sense that kind of like sneaked in to like into your life. But I feel like based on where you grew up and currently still live, which is what, an hour and a half north of Manchester.
Yeah.
You don't just like, I don't think most people don't just naturally have a respect or find the curiosity, but I think based on the blend of the two things you're talking about, one adventure and like wanting to chase things and like having drive, but then also having, I think from my knowing you for the last 2 years, I feel like your dad has had an impact
100%.
in two ways. One being, you're describing how he is a softie in a sense in the greatest way for wildlife, and how he's got like bird feeders and this and that all on the property, and he like has a love for that. But at the same time, you know, successful, driven guy who you probably have taken both of those things from, and then have kind of found yourself in this position where you can kind of do both. And
100%. I can thank everything, the position I'm in. Obviously, yes, it requires hard work and a lot of dedication from myself, but every opportunity I've had or the position I've been able to put myself in I can thank because of my parents. From when we were young, they were always very set on making me get to experience so many different aspects of life, to know that there's so much more out there. And we were always a very adventurous family. We were never really interested in going to an all-inclusive and just sitting by the pool and soaking up a tan. We always wanted to be doing something. And with them, I got to explore so much of the world, from Africa, the jungles of Costa Rica, every other place you can imagine. And I think it just was ingrained in me from a young age that there is so much to life and so much adventure out there that there was no way I was going to settle for anything less. And I think because of my parents being so headstrong, so driven and motivated, and just a great team in general, I think I always idolized them in how I would want to carry myself, taking obviously characteristics from both. And I think that's what turned me into the person I am today, because I am so driven and I'm so focused on getting my goals, achieving my goals, following my purpose, and making sure that I'm having a whole lot of fun along the way.
Now, I think there's a lot of similarities in that if you don't have a support system, one thing is like just be like, great job, Scott. But like, not everyone has it in them to like go and do, because it's scary, especially when you're younger, to like go out and do those things. Similar for me, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing if my mom wasn't as like, no, you're an idiot if you don't go and do that. But I think most parents naturally want their kids to be safe and like have them comfortable and like around them, and they're accessible. And like the risk of one going to do the things that you go to do on your own and traveling and the things that potentially happen, that paired with just naturally wanting your children always near you, one, I think is actually a massive disservice to like living the potential best life that you can have.
Yep.
And the more uncomfortable you get, the more growth happens, which is actually the best thing for your children. But my mom was very much supportive and like, go do it, go do it, go do it. Now she's like, stop, because we're diving with sharks and shit.
Yeah.
But I think there's similarities there where, do you think you'd be doing what you're doing if they weren't pushing you? Like when you leave the door to go and do a project, has there ever been a moment of like, are you sure? Like, I don't know. Like, do you want to?
Never. My parents, although yes, they love me dearly and would want me to be home and be safe, I think for them, it's the opposite. It's their deeper feeling is wanting me to be home, but their more surface outwards feeling is them watching me chase my dreams and follow my passion. And I think they see so much happiness in me, and that's all they want. Like, my dad has taken so much time from going down the route of being super successful in business, earning loads of money, to actually wanting to spend more time with the family, so making those sacrifices. And I think because they always put us first, being me and my sister put us first, it was always our happiness was the most important thing to them. So there's never been anything that's, oh, what about this? If anything, it's always, I think they've helped steer me in that direction, because I think anytime I've had a thought of doing something different career-wise or trying to figure out what I wanted to do, they've always been very, but I see you so happy when you're doing this. Do you think you would be as happy doing that? And I think it then always just helps me like stay aligned sometimes, and definitely kept me motivated to get to where I am today, because it definitely wasn't easy.
Do you think that you could probably look back, and as we're kids, we always have like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
I would imagine, and like you just said, this was not on the docket. What was that original?
I wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be in the military. Or literally, or if I wasn't doing this right now, that's what I would be doing. I'd be in the army. My family is a military family. Every man in my family has been in the army. My dad, my granddad, blah, 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 so on, so on. And I think ever since I was young, I was so fascinated by it. War movies. My favorite toys were little army action figures that I would cover the floor with and make like battles happen and things like that. And I think as I've gotten older, I think I've realized it's very much my alley. I think I'd be great at it also because I'm a creature of habit. I love a route structure. I love a routine, but also there is so much of a blend of fitness and adventure in it. And although I see myself as a great leader, I'm also a great follower in the fact that I just get on and do anything. And there's not a lot that I won't do. And I think it's always just been, we'll call it now the backup option. Like it's always been there in my mind. It would just be choosing which branch I'd want to go into.
So what is it though, aside from like the adventure aspect? Like, is it like being a part of like a team? Like you're fighting towards a common goal, obviously, and you always have to be aligned. Do you see similarities in that sense of like fighting for something? In this case with SOSA, obviously there's alignment. You're not fighting, I mean, we are fighting other people realistically, just not like lethally. Where you see, it's like you have barracks all over the world and all these different conservation organizations.
I think it's very similar. I think it's just instead of using a gun as my weapon, we have voices and cameras. I think they both very align, and I think that's maybe why when you break it down like that, the two side by side are very similar. You deploy to so many different places around the world. You're not living in the best conditions. You have to just sometimes suck it up and get on and think on your feet. And we do that, live and breathe that every single day, every adventure we're on. Something is always popping up, something is always different. It's in a different environment you have to prepare for and think about how you want to shoot it. And obviously we're working with wild animals. They're so unpredictable as they come.
Yeah, I think that that's the challenge, is that there's the switching of the gears in what we do. It's like you could be in the Air Force, you can be a Marine, you can be like a foot soldier, because everything is different, not only from the environment, the challenge that's happening with that particular initiative, with that species that's at risk, different organizations that have different needs, different personalities. And so the challenges are constantly different and changing, and delivering on the outcome is always like the biggest thing. You walk away from projects being like did we get done what we needed to execute and get done? And that is always my biggest worry going into these things, because the responsibility is same as like almost like fighting for a country in a sense. Like there's people you're doing this for, there's organizations that we're doing this for, and there's this weird like ownership of like that I you know what I mean?
It's funny, I don't think I'd ever really thought about that comparison between being in the military and doing what we do. And when you put them side by side, they do actually, you're fighting for the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but you're fighting for the same like direction of bettering others that can't help themselves, whether that's civilians, your country, or the animals that can't fight for themselves. And it's weird. I've never really thought about that, but I think I think you hit it on the head with, maybe that's why I think I love this as much as I would have loved that, because there are so many similarities, and in the person that I am and the way that I am with being driven, fitness, all of that rubbish, they align perfectly.
Now, when you're saying you're fighting for things, why is it that you have the curiosity for one, but the need and the constant importance around storytelling for sharks? Because they're realistically harmless, and it's like you're trying to protect something that has such a negative stigma around it. You're fighting for something that is we talked about this last night, whether it be bees or sharks or plankton that we learned about. Without sharks or bees specifically, everything's screwed. The earth ends. What is it about sharks that draws you to that? Is it the danger aspect, similar to the drive towards going to like an environment where like this
I think that's
hectic?
what it is. I think I think it's a danger adrenaline aspect to it. I think I like the feeling of knowing that I am not top dog in that scenario, or knowing that I am such a small fish in a big pond, if you will. And I'm just so attracted to like predator species anyways. I'm always still am such a big dinosaur fan, sharks, cat species, all of those sorts of things. I think I think it's just a bit of a cool factor. I like the fact that you are a crazy deadly animal, and then being able to, I think, pair it with those personal experiences of then being in the water or so up close to this quote unquote killer makes you all of a sudden, it's such like a, I don't know, it's difficult to explain without actually doing it, because you can't really put into words the feeling of being in the water with a big shark, knowing that realistically, if they hunted humans, I'd be cooked before I even like realized what was happening, especially great whites, because they're ambush predators. You wouldn't even see it coming. So I think knowing that and being in the water with them, I think it is a bit of a danger thing. I think I like that feeling of living on the edge, and that just truly once in a lifetime type experience.
Yeah, I think for me, and you probably have a similar, the way I kind of put it is, I feel like I always have a good grasp on things. I feel like I'm usually in control. I feel like I can read a situation very well from whatever I do. And I always feel like everything's usually fine. Just on my approach to most scenarios, environments, whether it's a conversation I need to have, walking into a scenario, but when you drop into the water with a big shark, or you turn the corner and there's an elephant there, that feeling that comes over you of like, all this power that humans think they have is taken away in that moment. Not everyone gets that feeling, and that powerless feeling of realizing how small you are in those moments is, it's almost like it's a feeling you can't really.
It's like I think it's like a drug, like we were talking about earlier. I think it's an addicting feeling, because it is so wild. You're right. You have that moment of, oh my God, I'm actually so small in comparison to what I'm next to right now, and so wild. And I think it's because there's also that factor of, there's not really a compassion or emotional intelligence like you would have with a human, whereas it's a wild animal. They are driven by the bare minimum: hunger, feeding themselves, survival, which humans aren't really in to the same degree. So I think it could flip on a switch and they erupt like nothing you've ever seen.
And I think there's also this weird tie, and I think that most people could probably understand this feeling of, and that's why the difference between like people who don't really love cats love dogs, in that whenever anyone sees an animal and they go up to an animal, or an animal comes up to them, it's like a rewarding thing, like you feel accepted or validated. And dogs always validate.
Yep.
Right? And so, but with cats, people are always like very negative to cats, because it's like, doesn't even want to.
They don't care.
They don't care about me, whatever. And so it's like a personal issue for the most part of like, but they're still in their own unique way. That's why I'm fascinated by them, because they're so different with the characters, the qualities, and how they kind of operate. People love dogs for the exact reason. They get the bond and the interaction that they want.
Yeah.
But when you step out of domestic animals that are in your home, and you step out and it's not a dog anymore, it's a shark or whatever the animal may be, you step into there almost hoping that, one, something that can kill you won't. It kind of accepts you, comes and has interaction with you, and you get out of the water, or you get back on the truck after you've had a crazy thing happen.
Like,
and it's like,
you see what just happened?
it came into me, it was curious, it realized it, and it moved off, and it's like that interaction was wild, and it's like validation of a dog times 1,000.
I think that's what it is, because you're right, with a dog, I mean, it's pretty instant sometimes. Like any dog just sometimes wants affection. Whereas with a shark or something, like it's such a weird feeling. I can remember so many encounters. Like I was in the Maldives swimming with tiger sharks, and they can cruise by just out of the blue, out of nowhere. And sometimes they'll come super close and you can almost see their eye looking at you. Side eye, yeah, as you like both swim past each other, and they kind of just check you out, and then they swim off, and it's like so crazy. And I think when it's a predator as well, it's just that much more insane because they hunt to kill. So there's that fear factor in it, and because you've made that connection with that animal that has such a wild stigma around it, it is like a drug.
And so for those of you who like drugs, please do not just jump into the water with sharks, or go to Alaska and all of a sudden just chase that same feeling that a dog could give you but times 1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing, is that like realizing that like the better you get and the more experience you get, not only from just understanding animals better by being around them so much the way that we have, but learning from experts that are constantly doing this on the day-to-day, that specialize in their animal, that give you all the cues and things. Then you start to actually see those things play out. But yeah, this is not saying
you can't just go and do it.
Yeah, these are not dogs. So yeah, definitely don't. And make sure that you're going with professionals.
Someone who knows.
To integrate into that. But once you do it once, you will become addicted to that. And I think that's what happens with a lot of our SOSA trips that we have. Whether it be Alaska,
100%.
We have multiple people now that have continued to go dive with sharks after their first time doing it with Tanner underwater, our partner that we run programs with in Florida, because it's an out of body. So yes, don't just go and jump in. There's different environments and scenarios that you're reading all these things before you just insert yourself into these scenarios. But that's one thing, because I remember the first time I went in, and I think for everyone has that first time they get into the water with sharks. You're just like, because everything built around sharks is negative. That's why everyone doesn't want to do it.
Oh yeah.
But once it's like, okay, the stigma around sharks is glorified. It's made to be sexy because it sells, and it should, because they are absolutely dangerous.
Oh yeah.
But what was it about your experience with Saving the Blue? Obviously, we have a lot of the same probably thoughts and feelings around Tristan and Annie, who run that organization. What is it about Saving the Blue from an operational standpoint, ethical standpoint, research standpoint, conservation standpoint? What was it about them, their experience, that then like really blossomed you into like, yeah, I want to continue doing this?
Well, I think the simplest answer is definitely the fact that you're surrounded by people who share that same passion, and you then kind of feed off each other. And when you get those crazy interactions, everyone is also having the same crazy interaction. And I feel like it just kind of builds between each person and almost probably bonds you without realizing that it's actually doing so. But I think for me, it's always been the fascination and curiosity behind the science of it, and seeing the work being done to these sharks, learning. I think even just when you go out with someone who knows like the scientific names and remembers them so easily, or will see an animal like a shark and in the blink of an eye be able to tell you what species it is. And I think it's like that fascination of how clued up some people are with these sorts of animals, and just listening to the knowledge that they have on those animals is so like, so many times I don't even have a clue what they're talking about, but I'm so fixated on what they're saying that it just makes you want to understand it. And I think also because they're obviously my favorite animal, I think it's then paired with that fact, because they're my favorite, I want to be able to learn more about them and know more about them. And because they are arguably the most famous animal out there, and they have such a crazy stigma around them. It's then being able to understand the stigma and be able to present the counter argument with actual knowledge and experience as to why they aren't just crazy hunter killers and they are misunderstood.
I think it's important to kind of tell a little bit of backstory, in that realistically, Scott and I both had our first shark experiences with Saving the Blue. And to speak on Saving the Blue just a little bit, Dr. Tristan Guttridge, who you've probably seen many, many times on Shark Week each year, and Annie, his partner, have started an organization called Saving the Blue. Saving the Blue is really what brought us together, but it's also what's brought me into having the love for sharks, understanding the importance of sharks. And right now, Saving the Blue operates out of Florida, as well as Bahamas. Right now, they have made a huge step forward, and that Saving the Blue now has started building a research center in the Bahamas. It takes a lot of work to get that going and a lot of funding, but I can attest that after being out with them on various occasions, from Mexico to the Bahamas to Florida, probably, I would maybe say around 75 sharks at least, tagged over that period of time, all crucial studies. They study silky sharks, hammerhead sharks, and are now also coming out hopefully soon on some new research and studies around the small-tooth sawfish. And so they do such important work that having this research center built will do so much for sharks. So if you want to support an organization for the love of sharks, go to Saving the Blue's website. We will link it here. And let's get some funding in for this research center that they have on Andros Island in the Bahamas. And one day you can go visit there. They still have operations on the monthly basis, expeditions throughout the year that you can go out and actually tag these animals, find the love that we found on that exact same boat down in the Bahamas, and fall in love with sharks. If you're going to do it with anybody, do it with Saving the Blue. So kudos to Saving the Blue. Where was I going with that? In regards to taking it, sharks as this, pinnacle for you. Obviously, there's been a bunch of different moments that you've now been introduced to across all the different projects that we've been on. Is there anything that comes close to some of those, on the boat tagging shark, expeditions, or is there anything in a different environment, or maybe there's a few that stand out to you that helped even more so solidify that outside of sharks sharks is one thing, but if you were to step outside of sharks, it's like, am I going to continue to like this? Is there other animals like this that still make that drive happen?
I think going on a pure animal basis, it has to be Africa. I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's my most traveled to country, I would say. And even when we would go on family trips and do different things, it is so wild out there. So wild and so raw. And seeing like packs of lions hunt, or wild dogs going to hunt, any of those sorts of animals doing what they're doing, it is so wild. Like, it's literally almost as if it is the ocean equivalent, because you go underwater, you see so many fish and stuff like that. It's the same kind of on the savannah. There's so much life everywhere. And especially as a kid, seeing lions for the first time, a big king of the jungle, seeing them go out, chase, kill other animals, it's raw. I think that's what it is. And it is pretty much as wild as it gets when it comes to animals and the habitat and the ecosystem that they reside in. It's a pretty special place.
Yeah, I think the comparable to me is, yes, that, and then I think the Amazon being the other that.
Yeah.
I think the Amazon has been has been the equivalent to what an animal can make you feel powerless. I feel like the Amazonia
Environment,
realm, just the environment alone feels like it can eat you alive.
Yeah.
And that is another one where I push people to go to the Amazon even more than Africa sometimes, because it's like, if you really want to feel small and understand where humans' places in the world, the Amazon can really bring you back to life.
Yeah, I mean, every time we go out there, it's watching out for snakes, looking at everything's massive as well. Enormous spiders, everything looks like it could just ruin your day. And everything is so dense, especially at nighttime, it comes alive in there. It's so loud sometimes when you're in the jungle. And I think it's definitely my favorite environment, being in the jungle, because you're right, it is so wild in that sense. And the idea of maybe walking around somewhere and seeing a cat species, like a proper wild cat, would be mental.
When you're speaking about how crazy these environments are, there's probably so many different people. I know there's, because we get reached out to a decent amount of times. There's so many different people that, one, either think they're built for this type of work, and that conservation is this, it's like glamorous and it's easy.
Go work with animals and...
Yeah, right. And I think, one, we can go in multiple different directions with this, but you're never fully present because you have a job to do while you're there the whole time. So you're not just sitting there taking it all in. The only time we really take it all in is if we watch some video back and be like, oh yeah, that was cool.
After
like,
we've edited it all,
right? Because you're trying to make sure you deliver. But for people who, for one, think they want to get into wildlife videography and expeditions and exploring in these environments, who is it for and who is it not for?
I would only ever say it's for people who really can just get dirty and get on with anything. It's not pretty, it's bloody hard work. You're disgusting, stinky, sweaty, like drenched, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. Like, I think I'm actually allergic because I get torn up by mosquitoes. But you have a job to do. And I think you have to go in with the idea of, this is gonna suck, it's gonna be hard, but you're doing it for a purpose that's bigger than yourself. I think it's difficult without calling out too many people, but I think if you have any worry of being tired, dirty, sweaty, long days, whatever, it isn't for you. You have to just be able to bite down and get on with it, because that's all you can do sometimes.
Yeah, I think the other thing with it is, because it's wildlife, it's so unpredictable. You can just be thrown into something where it's like, gotta get up, gotta do this, or like, this is happening, get the camera.
If you're a perfectionist, you are doomed. Simple as that. Like, you either, especially from a videography point of view, you either get the shot or you don't. You can't worry about it. You have to then move on and get the next shot, because animals might not be around for ages. They might literally just be a passing moment. The videography is as raw as the landscape is. You just have to work with what you've got, and you can't worry about it. So when you see these incredible BBC documentaries and things like that, that's not real. That's not the real jungle, because they're there for years sometimes, capturing one moment, spending months to get just one shot. We're there for 2 days, and sometimes we have an animal for 10 minutes and we have to fit an entire story in that 10 minutes, talking points, brand plugs, this, that, all the rest, making sure we say the right lines, hit the right points, then get photos. What you see as wildlife documentaries and wildlife videography is not real jungle wildlife documentary work. It isn't.
Yeah, and I think the other piece to that is, people, and I see this across the board, think they're ready for it, and maybe get, an opportunity. But in conservation in general, it's so hard to get into the space. And then one, you can get into the space to some degree and offer, free time to get that experience and portfolio and all those things. But one, typically in the conservation space, working the way that we do, specifically with nonprofit organizations, all that, there's not a lot of money to go around. You have to constantly be creative, and you've got to like dedicate and commit to hopefully eventually getting into that space. So what would you say to people that want it, once they and if they get that opportunity to be out there and do that? What do you think set you apart from the average, that when an opportunity comes, or maybe they've been doing it for a year, maybe 6 months, where pay hasn't been great or whatever it is, like what is it that you think either a nonprofit is looking for when they're trying to hire one role? Who are they looking for, and what is it that people need to have to find it and then stick it?
Well, I think the number one thing is passion. Like, you have to love what you're doing, because this isn't easy. It's not easy. You have to really love the work that you do and the animals that you work with to be able to succeed. Because if you have any signs of doubt, they will eventually form into bigger cracks and it will just crumble. I think the next is, like I said, you have to just be able to get on with it. I think being yourself 100%, because you're working in close, tight-knit groups. Sometimes everyone's tired, everyone's hungry, people get cranky sometimes. If you can't accept that, or maybe you're a bit sensitive, it isn't going to work in the long run. And I think you have to be passionate, and you have to just be able to suck it up sometimes. And to encapsulate all of that is you have to believe in yourself and your goal. If you lose sight of your goal or what you're working towards, it will fall apart, because you have to stay dedicated for a long time. And it's not an easy space to get into. There's not a lot of money in it. So you've got to work for it. And I think it is just it's a time thing. If you can stick at it, stay true to yourself, stay true to your goals, follow your passion, and just keep going, I think you will get there. I can confidently say you will get there. You just have to keep believing in that, because it's not easy. Yeah. It's not like getting a big corporate job where it's like, this is the ladder, just work for 5 years, eventually you'll get a promotion, blah, blah, blah. And then when you're 60, you'll be CEO or something. It's not as clean cut, clear cut like that.
Yeah, I think it's too, realistically, I mean, I've never really cared about money. All I care about is security and sustainability. Mm-hmm. And I know that being in the conservation space, you're never going to be rich. You're never going to be. But the opposite end of the spectrum is that there could be somebody that is rich, still living in their bubble, has a really nice home and a nice car, and is rich in that way. Maybe a great family life and those things. Maybe not loving their job, but fulfilled in other ways. This space specifically, you're not going to be rich, but you'll be rich
in experience.
In experience and like life. You will go to the end of your time, and and this is the crazy thing, and I know this, wild that I say this, but I do say this, like realistically, if that vertilance got me on the trail 5 days ago, and I had one day and I was laying in that bed, it's like, I've done some crazy, like I've lived.
I feel the exact same way. I feel the same way. I've lived and experienced more in this life than multiple people will ever in any life. And I think that's also like, going back to my parents, I think it's also like a bit of a dark realization, or a dark joke, is always that I think they're aware of the fact that sometimes things do happen. Sometimes things don't go well and accidents do happen. And obviously you don't want it to be the reason you pass. But if it came to be, I would feel, and I know they would feel, content in, or at least be able to accept in the way that it happened, because I was always following my dream, chasing my passion, and I would be accepting and happy with how it went if it was to ever go that route of dying due to an animal or something, because I knew it was doing something in the line of work that I loved. And yeah, I mean, it is hectic. It is hectic sometimes.
So when you're, looking on the next, I don't know, 5-10 years, and obviously we've spoken about how one, the SOSA in general has, found its niche per se in what we do, and we, look to partner specific with NGOs to like build out trip experiences and things for, what we get involved in. You having that adventurous side, what is the avenue that you'd like to see the SOSA go more in that ties into like your
I'd love to see expedition stuff. I'd love to see, oh, there's a sloth in the tree. Straight over there on the left banister, scratching himself. See it under the armpit?
Oh yeah.
That can be one for Michaela to see if she can spot when she gets back.
Hopefully.
I'd love to see SOSA do some expedition stuff, some more like real adventure type things, whether it was something like the elephant charge that we did, or trekking through the jungle, like doing more. It could even be to, let's say, raise awareness for these habitats or something like that. But I'd love to see more actual pure adventure expedition stuff with animals sprinkled in, as opposed to, I think, animals being the focus, adventure as like just because you're in that environment. I think I love the idea of, like, when I go mountain climbing with my boys or doing something like the elephant charge, it's potentially spinning it so it's fighting for conservation and animals and habitats, but you're doing it in a way that's so different. Like, someone I love seeing their content is someone called Ash Dykes, he just did a streams to sea, finding the source of the Amazon River, where they were trekking through the Amazon River, obviously to find the source, and then go from the source all the way out to the sea. And they were in the jungle eating piranhas that they've caught, or like they're going on kayaks down the river and they spotted a wild jaguar on the bank. Like, I think that adventure exploration aspect, even if it was like something with Defender doing some big expedition type of thing, I think that's what I'd love. An expedition aspect. I think that's why I also like the idea of going to Antarctica.
Yeah, I think in general, I've been seeing a lot about this as obviously the trajectory of tech, right? Takes us so much deeper and deeper into the palm of our hand with our phones. And so, yes, there's obviously a big growth, and I think it's going to continue to go like this for a while. But in turn, I do think that the opposite will be the most valued, in that people will, again, hopefully start to crave what's actually out there and real, and the feelings that you can't get from just watching things through your screen. And I do think that that is equally as important to actually change how the earth and how people view the earth and the respect of it. We're so glued to things that don't matter. And again, the way that I've been able to connect and be the person I am was because I was able to be curious at my cottage, and I had the luxury of having a cottage that grasped that and allowed me to be always curious in that. But not everybody has that. And I think hopefully that as we focus more and more and more and more on our phones, the opposite will be of equal or higher value in and I think that's just better for the planet and people in general, because that exploration feeling and feeling like you're conquering something, there's growth, there's internal challenges, all of it with adventure, wildlife, conservation, exploration, that whole realm I think is one, healing, two, you find yourself, and it's just I think living the way that we always actually should have, because I don't think we were always intended to have
iPhones
the text and all the things that we have.
Yeah.
It's a tool, and but we've went so far in the other direction that it's hoping that this industry that we're in maybe gives us a chance to make a little bit more money to sustain ourselves, and like that people will again value this industry and just heal themselves at the same time.
I think it will, and I think COVID definitely helped a lot with that. I think it definitely goes in waves with, obviously, we live in such a tech-orientated world. People are so glued to their phones that then when something like COVID happened and everyone was forced to stay inside and all you really could do is watch TV, play video games or whatever, that people then craved to be back out in the outdoors and go on those, 15-minute social outside walks or something like that. They were like the pinnacles of people's days because they were actually able to go outside and breathe in the fresh air. I think it definitely will always come full circle. I think it's almost, you could call it the life cycle of tech. Like, you're always going to be glued to your phone, but too much of it will almost burn you out, that you'll need to get outside and experience a bit of natural life again. And I think those sorts of expedition type of things, like our Alaska trip, for example, is very much kind of like that. You're in a bit of a real tent camping situation in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, and you're going out on a bit of an expedition, exploring, coming across crazy animal encounters, seeing these wild moments, like trekking through the jungle. These sorts of things will become so much more crucial and bigger in people's lives and aspects to a real life encounter. Because going on safari is great, seeing all these animals and stuff, but you're still in a safari vehicle, maybe going back to a nice lodge at the end of the day. It's not quite as raw as it could be.
So obviously the biggest challenge in the position that you're in is that, yes, you're trying to tell stories for conservation organizations and the needs for a lot of wildlife that is at risk, and there's a long list. So in one sense, fantastic that everyone has their phone in front of them. But with just having their phone, and majority of people don't have the ability to go out and connect where they can find that love. What are the challenges for you with all these different platforms, types of content you be pushing out, polished versus raw? In terms of storytelling, do you find challenges, even though people are in their phones all the time? What are the challenges in getting your stories that you want to tell across? Because I feel like there's so much competition across the board, not only from understanding all the tech, but battling against like prankers and like all this other type of content. What is the direction you're going to try to take to combat that while also trying to actually tell a story, but in a different...
I think that's where our YouTube will really almost shine and come into play, because it shows something that the real polished content doesn't, and it's the raw moments, the raw laughter, the emotions, the fails, all of those moments that make people want to connect and resonate, and all of a sudden they connect with you more because they don't see you as this perfectly polished person who just can read scripts really well. It's you have funny fails, you have moments where you're tired, angry, upset, and all of those human emotions connect you to that person. And with the integration of different characters is going to allow for people to resonate way more with, like Friends, for example. People always will consider themselves this person more, or I see myself more like this person, and it can provide the same through our YouTube platform, but with the access and the exclusivity of all of these different environments and different adventures. It's almost like its own kind of real reality TV show in the wild, but I think having so many different aspects for people to go, wow, that looks incredible, or go, oh my God, that person's so much fun. I'd love to be able to do what they do rather than just be so clean cut.
And I think that's the one challenge. I think the first step to even being able to go that direction, with one, not being unethical and being exploited for wildlife, is like always number one. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, is that the typical content that is out there that still aligns with the conservation, ethics around what organizations want to portray. Organizations, and as we know, right, a lot of them are scientists and researchers. Not a lot of them have come from a background of like being in front of a camera, aren't necessarily the best storytellers or the best educators, great factually, but not always the most entertaining. And so finding and leveraging other creators who are great at that to bring them into these conservation stories. But you can't get into that space unless you are trusted, reliable, credible, because these organizations have come a long way to get to the point that they're at.
They're not
fighting
going to
for
fall.
funding.
Yeah.
They're fighting for a lot of competition in the space, because unfortunately there's not a lot of funding coming through all the time. You've seen all the cuts happen in the US over the last year with new administration. And so they know where their big donors are. The big donors typically aren't 18 to 30 years old. They're 35 plus, older generation, doesn't understand the platform use and how you have to be competitive and get eyes on your stuff. The content you put out can't be dry. Conservation organizations want very lack of resources. They want to protect their image and sensitivity, so they almost shell up a little bit, stick to like facts, simple things, because those big donors that are giving big chunks of money
want to know what it's...
they don't care. They don't care about the nitty gritty and the reality entertainment aspect to it. And so, well, I'm just going to stay even keel here, because if I change my tone and try to be different or let anyone else in that might ruin our image or whatever it is, I lose Bob that's giving me 50 grand a year. But there is this massive untapped potential in that there's so many people, younger demographic, that just don't see conservation of wildlife in the light that it could be shown, where it's like listening to a fact from, I don't know, an organization that's too dry. It's a swipe, because next is like a really engaging, funny thing.
Exactly.
So how do you, what is this, how do you tell that story, but still playing on that line of conservation organizations still has to be the right messaging, allow them to do the thing they do best, stick to your professional script, and we understand that. But it's nice that we've found that credibility, reliability, and trust that they'll bring us in. And some of the storytellers we're bringing on, like Michaela and Rachel, who have also now been trusted in that space to come in and try to tell the story in a different way. Because if you don't, we're going to fall behind. The other piece being optimism versus pessimism. Is pessimism or pessimistic?
Pessimistic.
Most is dire. Help. We need help. We need help. Right in the landscape that we're in, obviously, there's wars, there's this. People are having financial struggles. There's so many other things that wildlife is way down the bottom of the list, because it doesn't happen in front of their face all the time. And slowly becoming an issue. So all of these different challenges, it's like we've got to try something different to hit the masses, because Bob, who's 50, aren't going to live forever. How do we attack the younger generation? For one, education, getting bought in, trying to feed that beast from an entertainment lens, but still ethical, still protective of the organizations. And I think that's the hard one, because we could lean into more so in being very raw and real and all that, but because we work on behalf of organizations, right? There's that fine line between what's entertaining, what's too much, what do we want to do, how much to work, like there's all these things, and it's like, and I think got to take a stab at it.
Yeah, and I think realistically, it's just finding that balance. And I think because as we're growing with more storytellers and essentially more characters in videos, it gives us more opportunity to take different angles and aspects on a particular moment, because you, me, Rachel, Michaela are all going to view things differently. So then in the edit, you're able to play with, this one's slightly more casual, this one's a bit more serious, this one's absolutely outrageous, what's going to fit the tone better. And I think it's working with the different organizations, because sometimes you'll go to an organization and it can be super freeing, friendly, and we'll do whatever and we'll make it work. Sometimes it can be a bit more cautious around that sensitivity, because they've worked so hard to get to where they are. And I think it just comes from, we find the balance in us as characters without having to force the NGOs to essentially be outside of their comfort zone. So, and I think some of it, you kind of just have to run with what the idea is you've got and believe that it will work, because you can't just consistently worry about, oh, what if that, you have to just pull the trigger at some point and just go with it, because realistically, you can think of any negative for any situation, any idea, and if you dwell on the negatives too much, they will overweigh the positives eventually. That's just how the brain works. So I think letting the NGOs be who they are, be the voice of fact and statistic, and then have the more casual, funny, integrated moments from us as characters, creates that balance and potentially drives that curiosity more for wanting to hear more of the scientist, because it's also coming from someone who you're going to believe more than me saying the facts. Because I say it because I know it or I've heard it, but they say it because they've literally done the research. It has way more credibility, and I think it is just that balance of characters and non-profits and just merging the two. And I think then you can create the best of both worlds. And I think that's just all you can do, because otherwise, you're bringing or trying to force things that aren't natural, and that shows on TV.
And I think too, I mean, we know, maybe they say content is king, but it very much is so now. It's like everyone and their dog is becoming a creator. And so the competition across that space is wild. And so if you don't lean in, and I think that's why we've really understood, and kind of where it started, and understanding that there needs to be a voice for voiceless, but even more so now, in that the resource I think that a lot of these NGOs need, that is as much important in a lot of ways than it is to funding, because it helps leverage funding, is media. But people, they don't have the resources, they don't have the kit, they don't have drones, they don't have people that have the expertise on their team to be able to execute all those things, to help tell those stories, one, in the way they'd even want to from a standard, statistical, factual standpoint, because they're actually doing the work, the grunt work on a daily basis. They're not able to step away and be a creator, but they all need creators. So that's where we obviously try to come in. It's like, okay, we're going to come in, this is what we're going to try to do for you, this is the lens, this is the platforms, this is what we want to kind of try to do. Media is going to become more and more and more important as the tool for organizations in general. And so with that, right, there's jumping into what that actually looks like. And obviously when we go through airports, it's insane the amount of things that we need to bring. One, from our brand partners and sponsors right now that to help fund ourselves in funding and supporting these organizations. But What, as you, as the team, what does that look like from a kit standpoint? What cameras are you bringing? What brands? How are you getting them there? What are some of the tools that round out your kit that allows you to execute in the field? Because I think a lot of people are like, what do I even need if I want to get started? Where would you start, and where have you got to, and what do those kits look like?
Yeah, it's funny. I've always been one for the newest kit and the next best thing. But realistically, when it comes down to it, that's all irrelevant. If you have a rubbish story. Like if you have a rubbish story or you aren't good in front of camera or whatever it is, doesn't matter if it's in 8K, 4K, whatever. No one's going to care. So I think the most important thing in your kit is just having the ability to be brave enough to start and do it. Like just actually don't care, just go out there and do it. And eventually you'll get better. And then comes the upgrades with the cameras. I use Sony. I've only ever used Sony, wouldn't go anywhere else. And obviously drones, DJI, that sort of thing, they're the only cameras I'll use because they're just the best in my eyes for everything I've done, every environment I've been in, never had problems. Nanook, for my cases, they're literally bomb-proof at this point. I mean, and I can trust that I go anywhere, and I know I'm not worried about my gear at all. Wind, rain, sleet, who cares? But yeah, I think it's just having the guts to go out there and do it. Everyone starts somewhere. If I watched my first video back, I would probably hate myself and the fact that I even put it out there in the first place, because it would be dog. And then in 5 years' time, I probably look back at the videos I'm doing now and go, I can't believe I didn't think of doing this instead of doing that. But you'll never know if you don't do it, and you'll never make that progress if you don't start. So you might as well start with whatever you've got. Phones are getting better and better. I've been using my new phone so much lately and it's unreal. Yeah, I think if you don't start now, maybe you never will. And that'll be a missed opportunity, and that'll be something that you regret. So regardless of the gear, just go out there with what you've got and do it. And then everything will follow from there.
And so, I mean, listen, you've heard it from someone who's done it all themselves, been provided an opportunity, made the most of it, learned along the way. So if you are someone out there that wants to get into the wildlife space, has a creative mind, wants to get into film or photography, there are opportunities out there. The whole realm of you succeeding, what success looks like, really just comes from commitment and dedication. And speaking to so many different organizations around the world that we've worked with, the one thing they're looking for is you don't have to have all of the knowledge, but you do have to have the urgency, dedication, and commitment. And from there, you are to become a trusted member and someone they can rely on. There's not a lot of resources, and so it's going to be hard work, but it can be extremely rewarding and a very rich experience. So if you are looking for anything to get started, you can listen to what Scott had to say. There's DJI, there's Sony, there's your phone. There's so many tools out there. We will be linking some of those tools in the description, and the tools to help us execute out there in the field, and the ones that we rely on because, well, our organizations and our wildlife rely on us. If you're looking for an opportunity, please send in a resume, a CV to the SOSA. We will eventually start taking on interns and be providing opportunities for those of you eager and wanting to get into the space. We understand that is not easy to get into, but if we can provide the same opportunity that we have provided Scott 2 years ago, and you aspire to be somebody like Scott and help different organizations, please drop them to this email in the bottom, and maybe you'll be out in the field with us. Okay, I think that is a wrap.
Pretty good.
great chat. I feel we could go on forever.
Go on for days.
But you can catch the rest of all of our adventures on YouTube and see the natural banter and things that unfold with the SOSA and our journey in this wild reality that is Earth right now. Let's try to make things more positive, less pessimistic, and thank you for listening to Wild Ones.
Cool.
I gotta pee so fucking bad.
Yeah, those hydration sachets were slowly getting to me.